I'm disabled and told my husband he was a liability after he left the front door open, ruined my car, and spends all day streaming while I handle our daughter and everything else. I'm 34F and have been married to my husband, Nathan, who's 37, for 8 years. Ever since our daughter, who's now 3, was born, I've struggled to trust Nathan with even the smallest things. A bit of background. When I was 19, a semi-truck driver fell asleep at the wheel, and my car was totaled with me inside it. I now have so much metal in my body that I light up security scanners like a Christmas tree. Some days are good, others are bad. I used part of my settlement to buy a house outright and make it accessible because I'll eventually need a wheelchair. I work in software development because it's fun and I can work from bed on my bad days. Nathan hasn't worked in 5 years, which was fine until our daughter was born. Between the settlement, a paid-off house, and my salary, we were doing well. Nathan took care of most of the house stuff, and we had cleaners come in weekly, with a monthly deep clean, so we had more time together. But after our daughter was born, it felt like Nathan just switched off. He'd buy the wrong size diapers, not mix bottles right, put diapers on backwards, leave poop wipes out, forget to latch cabinets. The list goes on. This past week alone, he went to the store 3 times and kept buying our daughter the wrong size socks and shoes. I eventually just ordered the right ones off Amazon. For me, he's tried to help with my weekly pill organizer, but spilled new meds all over the floor and missed picking them all up. He keeps forgetting I can't have dairy and puts milk in my coffee or cheese on my burger. He shattered my laptop trying to pack it for a trip, even though I said I'd handle my own electronics. He's broken so many things by being careless, like ruining my car's engine, trying to replace a head gasket, which led to us needing a new car. He then crashed the new car into the garage door because he mixed up the brake and accelerator. Nathan wanted to get into TikTok and streaming, and at first, I supported him. But I quickly noticed he was super sloppy with anything involving our daughter or me, yet totally meticulous with his own stuff. He'd build elaborate sets for his streams, but leave the garage and his common sense behind. It all came to a head 4 nights ago. Nathan streamed himself building a new set for 9 hours straight. Meanwhile, I worked, picked up our daughter from summer camp, made dinner, fed us, and got her ready for bed. When he finally came out to help put her to bed, I told him I needed to get some work done and asked him to take the trash out. 2 hours later, I left my office, and the house felt unusually warm. He'd taken the trash out, but left the front door partly open, and was back in the garage with his game volume cranked up. Our daughter was thankfully still asleep, but she could have easily wandered out. I also found a stovetop burner left on with an empty pot, something I hadn't used. I called Nathan and mentioned the door situation. He said he thought he locked it, but he hadn't. I asked him about the burner, and he said he was planning to make ramen, but forgot. He then ruined our daughter's favorite plastic plate by putting the hot pot on it. I snapped and screamed, "What are you doing?" Nathan realized his mistake and put the pot onto the countertop. I quickly cooled it with water and told him I couldn't deal with him that night, took my meds, and went to sleep. He then grabbed a cup and set it on the still hot burner. That was my breaking point. I started crying, and he kept saying it was fine, just an accident, and that he was tired from streaming. I lost it and said he was more of a liability than a partner. He stormed off to bed, and I called my mom. She said it was stress and offered to take our daughter for a week. The next morning, I told Nathan about Mom's offer. He agreed, and since then, he's been holed up in the garage playing games and streaming. He's been ordering DoorDash and won't talk to me. I've tried messaging him to discuss things, but he leaves me on read. When I pop into the garage, he ignores me, but apologizes to his friends for the interruption before unmuting his mic. I've been asking my husband if there's something going on, because he's been screwing up a lot lately. Every time he messes up, I try to respond gently, so our daughter doesn't start thinking mistakes always lead to anger. I even suggested he see a doctor to make sure nothing's wrong medically, but he always says I'm overreacting. He's like, people make mistakes, and doesn't see an issue, even when the same mistakes keep happening. When I tried to make him understand that I was concerned about how expensive his mistakes were getting, he'd just wave it off with, "It's not like we can't afford it." I love him dearly, but I miss the person he was before we had a child, the one I could trust and rely on. Did I screw this up forever? Was I being too harsh? Am I missing something? Regarding everyone's comments about whether my husband is using my money, well, we do have a joint account for household expenses and bills, But as far as I can see, he's using his own money. When he became a stay-at-home husband, I didn't want him to feel financially trapped or abused. The thought of him needing to ask for money or permission to buy things, or not being able to buy gifts secretly, felt wrong to me. My paychecks get split between the expenses account, $300 each, into separate accounts we can't see, and the rest goes into savings. To me, his money is his to save or spend however he wants. I read through all the responses and have now stopped allocating money to his account and removed his name as an authorized user on the household expenses account. Before our daughter was born, this seemed fair because he was handling the household tasks and maintenance. But I get why everyone's frustrated since the arrangement isn't fair or equitable anymore. I can't cancel his card because my name isn't on that account, but I've stopped all future deposits. Before our daughter was born, he was contributing a lot. He did most of the cooking, daily cleaning like dishes and cat litter scooping, and handled midweek grocery runs. He even made me scrambled eggs and coffee in bed so I could take my heart medication. I never had to worry about laundry or taking heavy pain meds just to fold and hang clothes. He still does most of these things, though sometimes the dishes sit overnight because he's streaming. Our toddler also wants each part of her meal in a different small bowl, so the dishwasher gets maxed out with those IKEA kids' bowls. He handles daily chores like dishes, scooping cat litter, wiping counters, taking out the trash, and cleaning random messes. Plus, he does the laundry and yard work. We also pay for a weekly cleaner, so the house never gets neglected even when we're busy or dealing with illness or visits. Honestly, I love having a professional cleaner come in monthly because it's really nice, and they're also a professional organizer. This has been super helpful as we transitioned from infant to toddler with all the clothes and toys. My husband is incredibly creative, and we used to have so much fun working on projects together. He's like a modern-day MacGyver. Give him some duct tape, 2 pennies, foam, cardboard, and paint, and he can create set pieces that look like Broadway props. He even learned how to make a mini forge from a flower pot and a makeshift lathe, practicing until he crafted the ring he proposed with, featuring my favorite gemstone, blue opal. His smile is infectious, and he tells the best and worst puns and jokes. He took cooking classes to make my favorite dishes and has his own recipe book. He belts out everything from aqua to Broadway tunes, and he's up dancing the second a Michael Jackson song plays. When I gave birth to our daughter, instead of hospital food, he arranged for my favorite restaurant to deliver my usual order to the hospital. I was so surprised and happy that I cried into my food. He used to take photos of every frog he found in our yard because I love frogs, and he made a welcome home sign featuring our favorite animals. On my bad pain days, he brings me meals on a tray he made that converts from a carry tray to a bed tray. He helps me with my socks and shoes, and even learned to style my hair to help me feel better. That's the person I fell in love with and deeply miss some days. He still shows flashes of being that person, but it's less frequent now. Sorry for not being super responsive, but thank you to everyone who gave feedback and suggestions. Before I get into the update, let me answer some repeated questions. Why does my husband not work? He could easily find a job, but we agreed that the pay was never worth the toxic environment of his field. He worked in home repair and renovation, and it was disgusting how his coworkers treated women. Female customers and coworkers were often sexually harassed, and many women ended up quitting because of it. He hated how gross it made him feel, especially when salespeople and adjusters took advantage. Yep, it's true. Selling subpar and pointless services at a high price is definitely a thing. My husband didn't dare say anything because his hours would get slashed until he quit. He actually quit one job on his very first day because his boss left a screaming voicemail. Why? Because my husband didn't push a refrigerant service to a young black couple who didn't even need it. Seriously. And yes, he's got proof and has reported multiple employers to the state labor board. But sadly, nothing ever came of it. After leaving the trades, he tried his hand at a factory job and a warehouse gig. Both of those jobs heavily penalized him when he needed time off for my medical needs. Worker protection? Forget about it. Nothing until you qualify for unpaid FMLA, which takes a year. Sure, walking away from a paying gig with your middle fingers up feels like a privilege. I've done it myself more than a few times. But now, I'm in a much better place where I'm thriving. My company is the total opposite of toxic. We have this awesome no-penalty, unlimited paid sick leave policy that is seriously enforced. Any manager who messes with it gets the boot. It's like a unicorn company. Now, throw a kid into the mix, and it's almost impossible for my husband to find another unicorn employer that won't penalize him for needing time off for me or our daughter, like when daycare shut down for a week because of an RSV outbreak. That leaves him out of the workforce until either I quit my job or our kid is old enough to not need constant attention. Plus, my job pays nearly double what the best paying job he's ever had did, and I don't lose any pay when I need time off. It just doesn't make financial sense for us to switch roles. Oh, and no, my husband isn't some big shot TikTok or Twitch streamer. His TikTok lives have about 6 viewers on average, and he's got 3 followers on Twitch. When we did our taxes, he didn't even get a 1099. He showed me he made a whopping $6 from TikTok gifts and zilch from Twitch. His viewer count hasn't changed much since last year. Why do we still have a weekly housekeeper and send our daughter to summer camp and part-time daycare? Well, I can't stand the thought of one spouse working a 40-hour week while the other juggles all the domestic duties and child-rearing, essentially being on call 24/7. I wouldn't want those expectations placed on me, and I can't imagine putting that on someone I love. If my husband had to handle all the activities and field trips that daycare does, his evenings and weekends would be filled with domestic chores that I physically struggle to help with. The weekly housekeeper helps prevent small messes from piling up into overwhelming tasks. The monthly deep clean and organization have been a lifesaver as we transitioned from having an infant to a toddler. Our daughter started part-time daycare when she turned 3. Before that, my husband was her primary caretaker, which made the housekeeping even more crucial to keep things from falling apart. About the allowance thing, yeah, I wanted my husband to have his own money, even if he wasn't working a traditional job. Maybe I've been on social media too much, but I've read so many horror stories of non-working spouses, mostly women, being financially trapped or unable to leave marriages because they had no access to money. Should I have stopped it sooner when our dynamic became too unbalanced? Probably, and I own that. As for what happens if we ever get divorced, the house and settlement balance are in a trust, completely separate, and as far as my lawyer can tell, out of his reach. Alimony would be up to a judge, but given my documentation and his professional licenses, plus my ongoing medical costs, there's a good chance I wouldn't owe him anything. Now, on to the update. On Friday, I finished work and was greeted by the smell of dinner. My husband had it all plated when I came out of my office. He wanted to talk over dinner, and yes, I read the comments on Reddit, and no, I'm not changing how I write about him just because he can see it. I don't exactly know how to describe his reaction, but he said he'd spent the last day reflecting. He admitted he didn't think he had ADHD. He revealed some heavy stuff about his mom being addicted to opioids and trying to get him diagnosed with ADHD as a kid. He did seek therapy once he realized what she was doing. He's willing to see a psychiatrist again, not because he thinks he has ADHD or autism, but to rule it out and ease my worries. He joked, then quickly apologized when he saw it hurt me, saying everyone must be right about something being wrong in his brain since he chose to love and marry someone medically fragile. He also admitted he drank a bit too much during a stream recently and promised to monitor that more closely. Lately, he's been filling his wine bottle with grape juice to fake being a jolly Viking while actually being sober. After dinner, he surprised me with tickets to the new Deadpool movie. We went to a different theater because he'd looked up where to find limited edition popcorn buckets. I now have the baby Deadpool one that holds popcorn and a drink. The next day, we really talked about how our family dynamic had shifted for the worse, how all the little things added up. For me, a genuine apology includes change. If you keep doing the same things you're apologizing for, your words are meaningless. So, we had a serious talk on Sunday about the way he keeps making the same mistakes, like over and over again, without even realizing it. We discussed both short-term and long-term changes that need to happen right away. For starters, he's now in charge of scheduling his own doctor appointments, and we've set some timelines for our expectations. We also agreed that any costs to replace or fix things he's messed up will no longer come out of our joint expense account. Instead, he's going to cover it from his own allowance. We talked this through, and I decided to turn his deposits back on, but only for $50 per paycheck. He actually suggested we keep it that way until he's paid back the cost of fixing the garage and the car from earlier this year. He admitted that it'll take him a lot longer to cover the cost of wrecking the engine in my last car. But he's committed to finding ways to make it right. Yeah, I totally see the red flags. Things like love bombing, not realizing how often he's messing up despite our talks, thinking that just saying sorry is enough, and not getting that repeating the same mistakes is basically like never apologizing. And yes, I know he's going to read this. Do I think this is all resolved and will end up as the perfect married couple growing old together? Not really. And sorry, but not sorry to my husband for now. Is this a possible step towards resolution? Maybe, but he fully knows he's got a lot to make up for and a tight timeline to do it. The lesson for our daughter later in life is either going to be that real accountability can steer a wayward ship back on course, or that taking accountability is the right thing to do even if it doesn't give you the result you wanted. Or she might learn that love alone just isn't enough. By the way, he finally read the post, so read between the lines of what I'm actually saying. If it's not obvious, check out the last 4 words of the previous 4 paragraphs. Yes, I'm ready to rumble. There's some truth to his joke about his ability to work being affected by my medical needs. I'm trying to be a supportive partner. That's why I pay for housekeeping, part-time daycare, which is a full-time summer camp right now, and make sure he has his own money to spend. Yes, my medical needs impact his ability to work, which could hurt him if we split up, because he won't need a unicorn job with unlimited PTO. Would I still help him get back on his feet? Most likely, though a judge might not make it mandatory. And yes, I know I need to grow a spine and have more tough talks with him to improve things. Trust me, I wish I could replace my spine, which feels like it's held together with duct tape, rust, and vibes. I'm well aware that he's probably in a panic right now about the next month, and while that might be a refreshing change, it's probably temporary. Sorry folks dogpiled on you before, but you're mistaken if you think I want to keep living like this. Just to clarify, my posts have way more followers after a week than he does on all of his streaming stuff combined. I have a hard time believing he couldn't keep a job because of a toxic work environment, but that's just me. But, yeah, the toxic work environment part is sadly true. I've seen the evidence he submitted to the labor board before everything went sideways. Things were great when he was a house husband, and it's a bummer he messed that up. Financially, I'll be able to retire in a few years unless something crazy happens to my career field.